Hi, everybody. We're back again with another episode of Metaphor, Liveplex's own podcast. And in this podcast, we normally talk about concepts in Web3 and blockchain. We talk about how businesses are adopting it. We talk about new concepts. But today we have with us Oracle, Mark Rakhmilevich. And Mark is going to talk to us about how Oracle looks at blockchain, how enterprises will be adopting blockchain, and how the partnership between Liveplex and Oracle is going to change the way businesses operate. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mira. Thanks for having me.
Now, let's talk about how Oracle is looking at blockchain as a product, and how do you think businesses are going to adopt it?
We have been looking at providing blockchain capabilities to our customers, and our customers, of course, from Oracle perspective, largely enterprises and government organizations, and medium enterprises, sometimes small enterprises, but companies. We are not a B2C company by any means. So when we started down this path, and this is going back over 5-6 years ago, we saw the value proposition being that companies can join to do business transactions together, share data in a trusted ledger to solve the kind of ecosystems challenges that you typically see with B2B transactions. When you see supply chain, of course, is a great example, right? There is a lot of inconsistencies in data reconciliation that happens after the fact, whether it's financial transactions or product inventory shipments or product history, traceability, provenance, where it came from, and many other things where companies have to work together. In the past, this was usually done in an API-driven manner, point-to-point. In the best cases, in the worst cases, this was done by exchanging spreadsheets that somebody would attach to an email. It was very common for customers to extract data from their ERP system, maybe or their database, put in a spreadsheet, send it to somebody else, get an update as an email response with spreadsheet attached, and then go into the system and manually re-enter the data. So you have all of the challenges that the data was not verified. It created opportunity for human error, for fraud, for mistyping, and at the end of the day, then somebody had to get on the phone and reconcile things that did not match. So we saw that as a great opportunity when we introduced our blockchain platform, which is enterprise focused based on Hyperledger Fabric from Linux Foundation in 2018, in the summer of 2018. So it's been 6 years, 5 years now, and we have a number of customers that have started down that path. And so enterprise blockchain has been, strong focus for us. But lately we have seen some changes as well, and we can talk about, how customers are beginning to think about Web3 capabilities, decentralized capabilities, and take advantage of them, particularly in B2C enterprises, but also in some B2B cases.
Absolutely, and we've seen that change through, our process of selling Web3 APIs as well. What we've seen is that there is a greater understanding towards Web3 and how it will solve a lot of bottlenecks that exist today in a very Web2 environment. Now, when customers approach you, I think a lot of customers are still emerging to understand this technology. How does Oracle take it to their customer base? How do Oracle teams position it with their legacy customers? Oracle's been around for many decades inside these accounts. But then when you go and change the way these accounts are operating or tell them that there's a better way of operating, how do your businesses, how do these enterprises look at it?
Absolutely. So there's sort of two main approaches, I would say, that we see. There are customers that come to us because they are interested in doing things on a blockchain. They've already found some examples maybe in the industry from maybe their competitors, and they're curious about how they could get started in that space. So they might have some understanding and maybe a use case in mind that's relevant to their industry. So that's a great starting point. We could then help them to explore that. We have sort of this overall methodologies that starts with the discovery, trying to understand the customer use case in mind, as well as educate them on what's happening relevant to the industry. Oracle operates across 20, 30 industries, right? Very broad. And so we try to be very vertically oriented in those conversations. And then we can help customer figure out how to do a design of a set of capabilities that blockchain can enable, integrate with the existing systems, how to create and onboard an ecosystem of partners and so on. And, that kind of evolves into building an actual prototype and MVP perhaps, and taking it from there. There are other situations where we actually begin the conversation from our end by helping customer visualize how a blockchain-enabled capability can solve a particular problems they have. So they might have some issues around mismatches in, the shipping information, or mismatches in financial transactions across, let's say a conglomerate that does a lot of intercompany transactions where they buy and sell from different lines of businesses. We had a great example, a story that was publicized actually by General Electric based on a project that we worked with them. They operate GE Aviation, GE Health, GE Power, GE Renewables. There is a lot of different businesses, and many of them buy and sell from each other, and well, from corporate, to the tune of 4 million intercompany transactions a year. And they have a centralized system that they built mainframe-based 25 years ago to help manage that and reconcile, because each of those lines of businesses has not one, but multiple ERP systems, right? They all grew from different companies, and they operate across the world. So there are separate legal entities. GE Aviation alone has like 55, 60 different legal entities around the world. So having those transactions all be available in a shared ledger and be able to reconcile purchase orders and invoices and whatever receipt information, shipment information, or in case of services, some kind of a documentation around services delivery, in a way that smart contracts can verify, they can check and make sure that it matches against the company kind of standards, and whatever intercompany agreements exist around particular transactions, amounts, dates, those kind of things, was very helpful. And so we actually started the conversation with them about modernizing that in the company billing system. And we very quickly got to the point where it became clear that a distributed ledger and smart contracts were the best approach for that. And so we went down that path and then, educated them on the capabilities, and worked with the enterprise architects in the finance team who was driving this primarily to help implement. There's multiple ways of POCs and pilots and all of that went into that exploratory process. So in some cases, we bring the concepts and the value proposition of the blockchain into the conversation. And we try to do that, of course, from a product management perspective. I try to enable our sales teams around the world and business development folks to be capable of those conversations, right? And share with them examples across different industries and types of use cases, and enables them to have the conversation with the customer. And in other cases, customer comes in and says, I have some interest in understanding better how to leverage blockchain, and or maybe I've done some research, maybe I've tried something and it didn't quite work out, because it's a complex technology, right? There's a lot of moving parts. So can you guys help me? Because I heard that Oracle's doing some things in that area. So
absolutely, and this has been a big challenge for everybody in this new industry. And when I look at this, I think it is a digital transformation process, and there's a lot of consulting required to get the customer to not only experiment with new technology, but also to adapt it. But when you see the results and the amount of money that they will save and the effort they will save and how they will modernize their technology, and upgrade it to what are the possibility of using technology, I think this is a great avenue for enterprises to look at. Now, Oracle also offers its blockchain on-premise as well as on the cloud, and that is another big element of why we as Liveplex partnered with Oracle as well. Of course, there's so many blockchains. There's absolute interoperability, and Liveplex integrates with most blockchains that there are, public or private. However, the fundamental for Oracle is that flexibility, ease with which a blockchain network can be created. Right. How you can literally move yourself into an open, interoperable and multi-cloud blockchain as well. And of course, how the APIs work throughout the process. Now, Liveplex APIs integrate into the Oracle chain, and this is a partnership that we have led over the last few months, and now it's finally live. Yeah. So can we talk a little bit more about how you see this partnership grow, but also how do you see enterprises are going to benefit from this totally new world of digital assets, this totally new world of smart contracts?
Absolutely, yeah. So As I said, flexibility and ease of adoption have been sort of our mantra from day one. We want to make blockchain easy and quick and simple to adopt. We want to make it easy for people to experiment with use cases, right? They need to be able to quickly, without a lot of cost and time, explore various things. So we've done a lot of work, whether it's low-code development tools that can automatically generate the smart contracts from specifications, or ease of deployment as a managed service that takes you 10, 15 minutes and you can stand up the full environment in Oracle Cloud. Takes a little bit longer, perhaps, using our on-premises version, which has a blockchain platform manager that kind of simulates a cloud environment, but you have to provide your own hardware, your own infrastructure, network connectivity, and all that. And of course, you can bring the two of them together. You can operate in a hybrid mode where you have both on-premise nodes and cloud nodes, and different partners in the organizations, in the ecosystem, can decide how they operate. And even if they want to bring in a non-Oracle Hyperledger Fabric node, we can do that as well, and we can interoperate. This was one of our sort of a marquee highlights, I guess, when we launched in 2018. That said we will be interoperable with other Hyperledger Fabric nodes out there from other vendors and other clouds, and so multi-cloud's been there from day one. That flexibility is very important because companies operate in different ecosystems. Sometimes they have an ability to say, okay, you're going to do things in a particular way because we're going to kind of mandate it. In other cases, they have to fit in with what the IT preferences, cloud vendor choices, etc., of their partners are. Sometimes they operate in countries where data sovereignty requirements do not allow them to go into a public cloud in another country, right? So we have, Oracle Cloud infrastructures now available, I think, in something close to 40 regions around the world, but there's 150, 60 countries. So we're not in every country. And some countries, say that, okay, you have to deploy the data, you have to deploy a blockchain node locally for data sovereignty requirements. You can link it to other nodes in other countries, but your node has to be local here. So we have this on-premise capability as well. So all of those things are meant to, remove the barriers. When we want customers to think about blockchain technology, we want them to think about the use case and the value proposition, and we'll take care of removing all of the barriers and the complexity and simplifying this and setting up the environment for them, whether it's on premises, in the cloud, or even third-party cloud for that matter. One of the interesting things that we have seen is as we started removing a lot of barriers from an infrastructure perspective, the remaining barrier has always been in complexity of creating applications, right? So let's say I got those infrastructure, it's great, it's scalable, it's performant, I can do it hybrid, or I can deploy it in the Oracle Cloud, whatever that means, or I can expand maybe my ecosystem partners. How I'm going to get value without having an application sitting on top of the blockchain and doing something specific to the industry I'm in, and whether it's a supply chain or it's other things. And so we began seeing the concept of digital assets, and more to the point, portable digital assets, tokens, essentially becoming really important in the last couple of years from an enterprise perspective, because they see that as a way to standardize an approach, right? What is a token? It's basically a way to represent certain objects in a digital world, in a blockchain, and have certain methods that are standardized, right? You can mint it, you can burn it, you can transfer it, whether it's fungible or non-fungible, certain operations. So you can essentially take an approach that says, okay, I'm going to treat some document exchange using NFT tokens because I like what NFT tokens provide out of the box. And then whatever delta I have to customize on top of that for my document exchange is minimal. We have examples of doing that. There is a project rolling out in India right now in a trade finance space called Secure Document Exchange. We're working with Robert Bosch and some local companies in India and some banks that are using essentially our NFT implementation to create a document exchange for trade finance, so banks can exchange documents that they used to exchange on paper before and so on. There are other cases where somebody wants to monetize certain transactions. They're creating an ecosystem and they want to charge for services. Our blockchain platform is not transaction-based pricing. We have it based on the consumption and the size and the scale of number of cores that you deploy, etc. But some customers then want to operate their network and charge, and so they use our fungible token support that we've created on top of Hyperledger Fabric to be able to monetize the services costs and charge, and then apportion the charges across different participants, and so on. There is also perfect examples, of course, in central bank digital currencies. That's another area where we participate in, and that's all based on fungible tokens and digital currency created based on that under the auspices of a central bank working with, the commercial banks in an intercompany use case, etc. So we're beginning to see the importance of tokenization as an enabler of doing things in a more standardized, and standardized really means it's cheaper and easier and faster, and you can get people to get around it, understanding the concept because they already understand tokenization, and you can have developers then add value in those unique areas rather than worrying about, okay, how to represent the data, how to make sure everybody calls the same methods and all of that. That's built in out of the box capability. And so what Liveplex, brings to this partnership is another set of APIs and capabilities that is standardizing how you manage NFTs, how you create and set up an NFT platform, and then you can add immersive capabilities, through metaverse and so on, as well, for various use cases. And so that's how we're together working to make it easier ultimately for enterprises to stand up solutions around NFT platforms, metaverse capabilities in a variety of areas, whether it's fan engagement or customer engagement, loyalty and rewards programs. It's a great case of tokenization, and many companies now that traditionally been very strong in loyalty and rewards are leveraging tokenization to support multi-brand loyalty systems where you can exchange loyalty points easily online. You don't have to wait 60 days for your loyalty points from one company to show up in another company's balance. And you can then extend that also to create, for example, NFT-based rewards for certain levels of achievement in the loyalty program, or rewards for certain amounts of spend, or other things that becoming very popular. Access to events, maybe special VIP passes, and it's very broad and I think very open-ended world out there when it comes to using tokenization.
Absolutely, and we have together approached many such business verticals. For example, we approach media and entertainment, loyalty rewards. We approach corporate training as a separate model. Utilities are a very big example of how to integrate how the future of utilities is going to be driven through exchanges based on blockchain. Telcos, of course. Fashion industry, we have esports and gaming, which is again GameFi is the future where interoperability and digital assets can be taken out of the game and owned and IP managed. Insurance is another such vertical that we're looking at in a very subjective way, but also innovating the insurance processes by using smart contracts and digitization and tokenization. Healthcare, real estate, retail, again, another big example of how you can not only manage supply chain in retail, but also develop immersive experiences for customers wherever in the world they are. Public sector, again, is another big example, hospitality, education. But one of the biggest ones also has been banking and finance, as we said, with currencies, with the development of immersive lounges for banks, but also virtual branches, which is the future of banking and finance, a bank that's available all the time with AI assistance.
And there is sort of this interesting concept that we've seen about embedded banking, right? So Oracle provides a lot of applications, ERP systems, point of sale, supply chain management, and on and on. And many of them at some point involve a financial transaction. So we've been working with a lot of banks to basically have a bank inside the application, right? And embedded through APIs, financial services, and we've partnered with some banks to do that. We're now beginning to see something analogous from a metaverse perspective, where certain banks in some countries want to be able to exist as a virtual branch, not just standalone. But for example, there is a conversation, a process going on with a bank in India, where they want a virtual bank in every car dealership in the country that they can reach. So they become embedded with a car dealership through this virtual branch, avatars, and you basically can go in and you can set up your car loan and other things. Or they want to be embedded in, every real estate office, right? So you're buying a house and there is a virtual bank right there to help, you not just go in a portal and have to figure out how to navigate and what options are available, but have a more immersive guided experience with an avatar that can take you through. And, whether it's using AI capabilities or sometimes there is human assisted stuff, to actually be present there. So it's just expanding the reach and taking those things which you used to think of as standalone and making them more embedded.
Absolutely. And we've seen this happen. We've seen this change come through with a lot of, I think a lot of customers, a lot of business enterprises don't want to be labeled as behind the curve in terms of technology. And the more enterprises we talk to together and otherwise, the more we feel that everybody wants to be here and they don't have a path to be here. And I think what our partnership does together is we are actually not only consulting them on that path, but also bringing them to a very easy way of moving to Web3. Mark, how do you think, what do you think the adoption is going to be? Is it going to be as slow as Web 1 to Web 2 was, or is this going to be accelerated because our world has changed after the pandemic?
Right. No, the world has definitely changed. I mean, we have seen, as a result of pandemic, people working remotely and so on. A lot of digital transformation initiatives that had kind of a 10-year vision got compressed into, 1 or 2 years. So we are much further ahead as a result of that, But I think it's going to depend on industry by industry, right? Some industries tend to be more innovative. For example, if you look at, financial services, right? They, always need, it's a very competitive environment, right? So they, by definition, have to be extremely innovative, and they have to really cater to sort of the new generation, right? I mean, the beginning,
Absolutely.
to talk to people that will.
What we've seen with banking and finance as an industry has been a lot of innovation has happened in banking and finance over the last 4 to 5 years, but none of them have been banks. So all the innovation has been has happened with startups that are actually not real banks.
Yeah, absolutely. And some banks see that as a, the threat, obviously, right? So they want to outcompete fintechs. I mean, sometimes they want to buy them and, incorporate them and so on. But, the younger generation, they have, 2 daughters who, grown, they're out of the house, they're working and so on. And, they have, their financial life, but they've never stepped inside the bank branch. They've never been physically in the bank branch. Everything they've done has been remotely.
62% of Gen Z and Zoomers do not have a bank account.
Well, okay. That's even worse, right? So they basically do things, with apps and, Venmos and, Zelle.
Exactly.
And so on.
That's where they store and use their money. That's how they do finance.
Exactly. So that's where I think, banks want to reach out to that generation and, offer services that will be compelling. And that's where some of the, Web3 capabilities come in. The immersive capabilities, I think, are going to be important in customer service and those kind of customer onboarding. And I think what we're going to see is increasingly, when it comes to content, digitization and standardized means of managing content, distributing content, sharing content, monetizing content, and so on. And so for B2C companies that live and die by content, and it's not just media and entertainment, of course, there is a lot of content in other B2C related kind of, industries or B2C focused companies. They're increasingly going to have to be present there, as part of that world. So, tokenization is important. Decentralized identity is another area that's going to be, I think, quite important. We're beginning to do some work there and, see some strong interest. Interestingly enough, that is coming not only from, organizations that you would expect, in B2C space, but government organizations at the state level. There's some initiatives that we recently worked on around decentralized identity and, validate credentials and all of that stuff. An effort going on, for example, in state of Utah that recently got approved through their legislative process over the spring. Is going to be going forward, creating some capabilities in that space and, many others. So we also begin to see how enterprises want to bring those capabilities into their own environments. And even in the case of B2B type situations, they begin to see value in using Web3. Tokenization is a great example. Product tokenization. So for example, you have a, production chains that may be outsourced. So there are, certain ingredients being used to create an intermediate product, another intermediate product, and ultimately some final products. We have a company we're working with right now in textile space, and there's multiple steps involved. But from the time the raw ingredient becomes a finished product you buy in a store. a garment of some sort, right? And they want to track that because it provides those certified materials, and they collect royalties as part of the process, but they want to be able to track that on a blockchain to have the visibility over that process. And there's multiple companies, multiple organizations involved in that, and creating essentially product tokens that allows them to transform and consume. And that helps with traceability, that helps with financial record keeping, and so on. We're beginning to see there is a case in Europe where there is a Ministry of Defense is looking to track some parts going into the next generation, jets and so on in production process and design process. They want to have full traceability of all the components and where they came from. Right? People are now very conscious about sourcing, right, and the countries they depend on, right. So they want to make sure that they have traceability. If you can't trace it, you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right. So managing it's very critical now for all kinds of national priorities and national security reasons and the like. Sustainability, ethical sourcing, that's another case. If you can trace things, and again, that tokenization is a great way of traceability of raw materials and into finished products. That's becoming important, particularly in automotive industry, but many other electric vehicle batteries, for example.
With the retailer, grocery retailer, they want to ensure that even every element of their supply chain is traceable, so that not only can they manage the temperature using IoT devices linked to the blockchain, but they can manage the shelf life of the food products that come to them through various supply chain mechanisms. So there's so many such big examples of how people are using the blockchain, how people are using tokenization and Web3. But honestly, for any enterprise with the need to efficiently manage their records or performance or data, securely store it, access it, ensure data integrity and confidentiality, manage data flows, automate repetitive tasks using smart contracts. This could just free up a lot of company time, not only company time, but make the entire process very efficient and transparent. And that's exactly what every enterprise is striving to do, by cutting costs, by making efficient processes happen. And I think we all think blockchain is the way forward for businesses to really optimize their resources.
Right, absolutely. No, I agree very much. I mean, we have seen transformations inside the companies, right, with ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, and the like, and that helps you to automate the processes inside the company. But companies now don't work by themselves; they are so dependent on the ecosystem, distributors, suppliers, and everybody else, and insurance companies, and what have you, financial services. All of that is so interdependent that just being able to manage well inside your company is not good enough. You now need to be able to manage across your ecosystem and all of your partners. And that's where blockchain, distributed ledger technologies, and tokenization, frankly, comes in and provides some very strong capabilities.
So here we are with this week's podcast with Mark Rakhmilevich from Oracle, and we've spoken about how blockchain can really transform business processes and make it more efficient, and how Liveplex and Oracle together approach the market to create this partnership that's a win-win, not only for us, but also anybody that works with us in the enterprise space, because what we end up helping enterprises do is reduce costs and optimize their processes using the technology that is not going to be only a new technology, but is going to be transformative in a very new realm, and how the customers, your customers of tomorrow, are going to approach the brands that they work with, because the customers of tomorrow not only want their data secure, they want to also have the flexibility for their metaverses to be there, their internet to be interoperable. They want privacy and security, and they want to be able to walk into immersive experiences, along with the fact that they are working and they support brands that have commitment to data security and privacy. So all of that is possible using the Web3 technologies.
Great, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Very interesting conversation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, our pleasure, and hope to work with you more on a win-win situation for not only ourselves but our customers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the customers have to see some tangible benefits, right? This is not just something you play with and explore. as an educational experience. There has to be some real ROI, some win-win for the customers and their partners in the ecosystem.
Absolutely. And that's basically what blockchain really brings to the table.
Yeah.
Always.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.